Global warming has fast become the issue of the 21st century. Today, it is widely accepted that global warming is happening, and that indeed we are a major cause. The question now is, what are we going to do about it? New technologies are being developed and put into place across the world. Even your cup of eco-friendly coffee might be helping to reduce emissions. However, when you consider that emissions caused by deforestation in developing countries now account for around 12% of the total global emissions of greenhouse gases each year, it becomes clear that many vital issues still need to be addressed. We have known for some time that the forests are the lungs of the planet, cleaning carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and emitting life-giving oxygen. They are a vital part of the process of life on Earth. For a country like Cambodia, global warming could be devastating, and not just in terms of deforestation and the problems that would bring locally. Rising sea levels threaten low-lying areas like the Mekong Delta, which could become unable to sustain crops due to excessive salt accumulation in the soil. Asia's forests are disappearing at an alarming rate when compared to other major forested areas of our planet, in Africa and South America. The region's primary forests have already been reduced to a patchwork of small areas, and as a result, a great many species are now under threat. It has become clear that if we want to ensure global climate stability, we must not allow the planet's forests to continue to be cut down at the current rate. The problem is that developing countries are doing exactly that. They're developing. They need to use these natural resources to grow as nations and to ensure their citizens have access to water, power, and the chance to improve their lives. After all, most of the developed countries destroyed their own forests in the name of progress. It is only natural to expect poorer nations to desire a similar standard of living. The deforestation of developed countries was disastrous for the environment and often for the people. These countries have spent years and billions of dollars to rehabilitate degraded forests in an attempt to reverse the damage done by the unmitigated pursuit of growth. One alternative being proposed is REDD, which stands for Reduced Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. In 2007, an agreement was reached at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Bali on the urgent need to take further meaningful action to reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. What is emerging is a rather complex process that will depend heavily on the future of the global carbon regime, as well as the ability to show that such projects are possible on the ground. The Prelong forest in Cambodia is one potential site for a future REDD project.
The carbon market was created by the Kyoto Protocol to reduce the cost of climate change mitigation and foster sustainable development. Projects in developing countries which reduce greenhouse gas emissions can sell carbon credits to companies or individuals willing to offset their emissions. The REDD mechanism aims at using carbon finance to reduce deforestation and enhance forestry projects. REDD credits are currently available in the voluntary carbon market and might be included in the Clean Development Mechanism after 2012. Through REDD, Countries like Cambodia that still have large areas of forest remaining could earn money through the carbon market by protecting these resources rather than exploiting them. REDD is, in essence, a very simple idea, but extremely complex to implement.
Bà hayនៅក្នុងដំណើរការអនុវត្តគម្រោងសាកល្បងយន្តការREDDនេះគឺរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាបានគាំទ្រដល់ការអនុវត្តនេះហើយបានកំណត់យ៉ាងច្បាស់ថានៅពេលដែលយើងលក់ចំណូលបានពីឥណទានកបោនព្រៃឈើនេះទី1នឹងយកទៅធ្វើការបង្កើនគុណភាពព្រៃឈើឲ្យរឹតតែប្រសើរថែមទៀតដើម្បីធានាការស្តុកកបោនទី2ចំណូលដែលបានពីការលក់ឥណទានកបោននេះនឹងយកទៅជួយដល់ការបង្កើនជីវភាពសហគមន៍មូលដ្ឋានដែលរស់ពឹងអាស្រ័យនឹងព្រៃឈើដែលចូលរួមជាមួយគម្រោងជាអតិបរមាក្នុងកម្រិតខ្ពស់ជួយទៅដល់សហគមន៍មូលដ្ឋានដើម្បីធ្វើយ៉ាងណាឲ្យគាត់អាចបង្កើនជីវភាពអាចចូលរួមក្នុងការកាត់បន្ថយភាពក្រីក្ររបស់រដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាបើយើងពិនិត្យជារួមទៅលើការអនុវត្តសហគមន៍ព្រៃឈើនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាគឺមានសក្តានុពលខ្ពស់សម្រាប់ការអនុវត្តនៅយន្តការកាត់បន្ថយការសាយភាយឧស្ម័នផ្ទះកញ្ចក់ពីការបាត់បង់ព្រៃឈើនិងភាពរិចរិលនៅព្រៃឈើបើប្អូនសហគមន៍នៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជានេះមានការចូលរួមយ៉ាងផុសផុសពីសហគមន៍មូលដ្ឋានដែលរស់នៅក្បែរឬក្នុងព្រៃមកដល់បច្ចុប្បន្ននេះសហគមន៍ព្រៃឈើនៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាមានប្រមាណជិត400សហគមន៍ព្រៃឈើដែលមានស្ថិតនៅលើផ្ទៃដីប្រមាណជា360,000 ហិកតាព្រមទាំងផ្ដល់នូវផលប្រយោជន៍ដល់សហគមន៍មូលដ្ឋានដែលគាត់ខំចំណាយពេលវេលាចំណាយពលកម្មដើម្បីការពារព្រៃឈើដើម្បីការពារជីវៈចម្រុះអញ្ចឹងជាឱកាសមួយមិនត្រឹមតែគាត់ទទួលបាននៅផលប្រយោជន៍ប្រើប្រាស់ជាប្រពៃណីទេប៉ុន្តែគាត់ទទួលបាននៅផលប្រយោជន៍បន្ថែមពីការលក់ឥណទានកបោននេះដែលមានរយៈពេលវែងដែលជាកត្តាមួយសំខាន់
The Royal Government of Cambodia recently finalised their National Forest Programme, which is a plan to manage the kingdom's forest resources over the next 20 years. A major part of the National Forest Programme is to identify which forests are of most importance to the country, and potential income from REDD is seen as a significant part of the overall plan.
There are several possible approaches to REDD which depend on individual country circumstances. For Cambodia, the national approach is being recommended. This allows for several projects to come under a national program which would help to avoid what is called leakage. Leakage is where you may successfully protect one area only to find that deforestation has simply moved elsewhere, so the net effect is absent.
Calculating the carbon value of a particular area is very complex and dependent on many factors.
To calculate the potential REDD value of a forest, we need to understand both the carbon content of that forest and also the deforestation rate in that area. This will allow us to have a baseline from which we can start. Simply put, if the government can reduce that deforestation rate, that will reduce emissions, and that difference can then be sold as carbon credits.
How much of the forest are they using on a daily basis? How much
REDD will need a great deal of capacity building and accurate monitoring to make sure that there's no leakage into the surrounding areas. Degradation is also very difficult to monitor, as opposed to deforestation, which can be seen more clearly from satellite images. For example, in Indonesia, forest cover is estimated to be declining by about 6% annually. 2/3 of that is from forest degradation and only 1/3 is from deforestation.
Today, Prey Long is divided up into several concession areas. The proposed REDD project would take over 3 of these concessions, totalling over 500,000 hectares. This would include a core area of 283,000 hectares that is of most importance to biodiversity, 188,000 hectares for a community forestry programme, and protection for an area of 45,000 hectares that connects the core area to the Mekong River. While it's far too early to provide accurate figures for the money this could generate, conservative estimates put it at between $12 and $18 million annually.
Yes.
Prey Long is very important for biodiversity and as a natural ecosystem because it's the last remaining lowland swamp forest in Southeast Asia. There used to be areas in Thailand and Vietnam, but they've been cleared for rice cultivation, so all you have left now are some small fragmented areas. So Prey Long is the largest single block that contains a large enough area to be viable for the species that live within it. 21 tree species have been identified in Cambodia as being of national importance for agroforestry or for conservation. 19 of those 21 species are found in Prey Long. Some of them aren't found anywhere else in the country. So protecting this one area, you actually protect almost all of the endangered or important tree species in Cambodia in a natural seed bank for use for future generations. From a carbon perspective, the swamp forests of Prey Long are very important because swamp forests normally are associated with the build-up of peat. Now, if you have peat underneath the ground, that basically can double the carbon value of that site. Also, deforestation of peat swamp forests can mean that you have the release of carbon for anything up to 50 years after the forest has been cleared. So clearing swamp forests could create a huge negative balance in the nation's carbon budget for the next up to 50 years.
For every hectare of rainforest that is burnt, at least 700 metric tons of CO2 is released into the atmosphere, with this figure rising to 1,700 metric tons for swamp forests. On top of that, a further 55 metric tons are released annually for at least 50 years through the drying of the peat contained in the swamp forest. This compares to the average US household, which produces 24 metric tons of carbon each year. Calculating the carbon value of each type of forest requires data from trees and plants above ground, as well as information on the carbon stored below ground in roots and dead plant material. In swamp areas like Prey Long, an enormous amount of carbon is stored in the peat, making a true carbon value estimate dependent on the collection of soil samples.
The development of a REDD project is a complicated process and requires collecting a lot of data. A team from Conservation International joined a botanical team from University of Copenhagen and the Cambodian Forestry Administration on a 10-day expedition into Prey Long to collect this data. 25.5. The expedition into Prey Long had two purposes. One was a biological survey to assess the plant and animal species found in the area. The other was a carbon assessment to link to the REDD project.
Because of the grueling 3-day journey to reach the swamp forests of Prey Long, there have been very few expeditions to this extremely remote area. An earlier trip by this same team yielded soil samples for assessment, as well as several tree and plant species. This time, the plan was to concentrate on collecting tree samples and carbon data. The team brought tree climbing equipment for collecting samples and dryers to store and preserve them.
That's the mealybug.
They always sit on the same liana.
Yeah.
It's strange. I don't know what's so special about this liana. This has been a really, really successful trip. We managed to map several forest types and characterize them based on the vegetation, but also we have mapped forests at different stages of regrowth after logging and shifting cultivation. So with this kind of data, we can now calibrate our satellite images and we can start to estimate the total carbon stock for this area.
We have a 22. Yeah. Did you get an or you have a little
In addition to mapping the different forest types, we managed to collect well above 100 tree species, mainly from the swamp forest. And of these, about 1/3 is only found in the swamp forest and are absolutely unique to this forest habitat.
We cross the swamp.
On the other side?
Yeah.
These specimens will now be sent to herbariums in Cambodia and into neighboring countries for proper identification and verification of species names.
The swamp forest is not the easiest place to conduct a survey, as the team discovered. While the swamp forest presented a challenging terrain for the survey team, they also had to contend with swarms of mosquitoes and some extremely angry tree ants. There are also some rather more dangerous inhabitants.
One of the dangers working here in the swamps, we're sitting here having lunch. Shortly after we discovered this snake lying here right about one meter behind me. It's one of the pit vipers, quite common here in the swamps. These are absolutely deadly if they bite. It has not all been about trees and carbon. We have also conducted biodiversity studies while we were here. We have recorded lots of different animals visiting the swamps, the tracks of elephants and banting and bears. Of special interest is that the Conservation International team managed to record not less than 5 different turtles from the area, all of which are endangered. That tells something about just how important this forest area is for wildlife conservation in Cambodia.
ក្រុមស្រាវជ្រាវរបស់អង្គការអភិរក្សអន្តរជាតិបានសហការជាមួយនឹងរដ្ឋបាលព្រៃឈើបានចុះស្រាវជ្រាវនៅក្នុងតំបន់ព្រៃឡង់ក្នុងគោលបំណងដើម្បីធ្វើការសិក្សារកវត្តមានរបស់សត្វអណ្ដើកនិងកន្ទីមួយចំនួននៅក្នុងតំបន់ព្រៃឡង់ការស្រាវជ្រាវរបស់ក្រុមយើងខ្ញុំគឺយើងបានធ្វើការដាក់លបនៅតាមបឹងត្រពាំងនិងស្ទឹងមួយចំនួនហើយលបរបស់យើងមានដាក់នុយដើម្បីតាក់ទាញសត្វអណ្ដើកឲ្យចូលមកហើយក្រុមយើងខ្ញុំបានធ្វើការឆែកជារៀងរាល់ព្រឹកនិងពេលល្ងាចដើម្បីជៀសវាងមានអណ្ដើកឬកន្ធាយចូលអាចនឹងងាប់ករណីមានភ្លៀងធំនៅពេលយប់ក្នុងរយៈពេល6ថ្ងៃនៃការស្រាវជ្រាវដាក់លបរបស់យើងខ្ញុំក្រុមយើងខ្ញុំបានធ្វើការរកឃើញវត្តមានយ៉ាងហោចណាស់មានអណ្ដើកចំនួន7ប្រភេទនៅក្នុងតំបន់ព្រៃឡង់ហើយក្នុងនោះមានមួយប្រភេទគឺជាប្រភេទដែលកំពុងទទួលរងគ្រោះថ្នាក់ដែលគេចាត់ចូលជាប្រភេទ endangered នៅក្នុង IUCN Red List.
For this trip we try to looking hard for the Asian list total cyclamis olhamii, but it's good we got these two total.
ក្នុងការស្រាវជ្រាវនោះក៏ក្រុមយើងបានរកឃើញនៅដែនជើងសត្វដំរីយ៉ាងច្រើននៅក្នុងតំបន់ព្រៃឡង់ហើយក្នុងនោះយើងបានរកឃើញដែននៃសត្វខ្លាឃ្មុំដែននៃសត្វភេនិងដែនជើងមួយចំនួននៃខ្លាត្រីការសម្ភាសជាមួយប្រជាជនមួយចំនួនបានអះអាងថាមានវត្តមាននៃសត្វក្រពើភ្នំនៅក្នុងតំបន់ព្រៃឡង់ផងដែរ
Recent studies have shown that old-growth forests don't act as carbon-neutral sites. They actually continue to absorb carbon. If prolonged forests are cleared, then not only would millions of tons of carbon dioxide be released into the atmosphere, but you would lose the future benefits from the absorption of carbon dioxide by the forests that have been lost.
A recent study from the Amazon jungle discovered that the forests were absorbing 450 million tons of carbon each year. However, during the 2005 drought, the forests actually began to produce carbon as they dried up. The net change was estimated to be a staggering 1.2 billion tons of carbon. As a comparison, fossil fuel-based emissions from the United States in 2005 were estimated to be 1.6 billion tons of carbon. The concern is that with global warming, the drying of forests will become a regular problem.
Many important natural wetlands around the world have been cleared and drained for agricultural and other purposes. It's only now that the countries are beginning to understand the implications of these actions. In the 80s and 90s, the Chinese government spent millions of dollars draining wetlands for agricultural purposes, But then they realized the implications of their actions because there were droughts and there was floods downstream that affected a lot of communities. Now the Chinese government is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to restore many of these wetlands to their natural state, to make sure that they provide the ecosystem services that the people need. The Prey Long forests aren't just important as a watershed, they're important as a natural filter. The forests remove toxins and other chemicals, and they also modify the flow of sediment into the Tonle Sap and into the Mekong River. So the Prey Long watershed is not only important for agricultural purposes in the surrounding areas, but it's also important for water security across most of central Cambodia.
So the whole idea is that now we can combine the two data sets, the one on carbon and the one on biodiversity, and if we overlay the maps of carbon-rich forest with a map of biodiversity-rich forest, we can provide the Cambodian government with a powerful tool for forest conservation planning in the future. And of course, if we can design a forest carbon project, which is not only to the benefit of the climate, but also to the benefit of biodiversity conservation, that would be perfect.
More than 250,000 people live in and around the core area of Prey Long, and more than 700,000 people live within 10 kilometres. Local villagers collect resin, building materials, medicines and foods from the forest. The forest is an integral part of their culture and spiritual life, and many depend upon these natural resources for their livelihoods.
REDD by itself was not aimed at reducing poverty. There are communities living next to and often depending on these forests, so if we don't involve them, REDD projects cannot be sustainable. In this sense, REDD has to work both on protecting the natural forest as well as alleviating poverty.
A big question surrounding REDD is how to effectively monitor the forests that are being protected. While it requires direct protection on the ground and management both locally and from central government, it also requires regular monitoring of satellite images to ensure that it is truly effective. To fully develop REDD projects in Cambodia, it will require considerable capacity building.
Okay. Good.
The recent National Forest Programme acknowledges the need for capacity building at all levels, from education in universities to government ministries, and of course at the local level. It is hoped that with the assistance of the Forestry Administration, the Cambodian forestry sector can be far more beneficial to the country in general and be exploited in a manner that ensures these natural resources are available long into the future. Today, we are spending huge sums of money to replant and rehabilitate previously forested areas. So why are we not trying to do more to protect what little remains of the existing forests? Old-growth forest is far better for reducing carbon emissions, and it also provides a much more effective way to preserve biodiversity for the future.
Prey Long appears to be the ideal place to implement a REDD project due to its enormous carbon stocks, its incredible diversity of wildlife, its benefits to the local communities, and as a major watershed in Cambodia.
Considering the high value in terms of both biodiversity and carbon content, a REDD project for Prey Long would also have an excellent chance of receiving the gold standard from the Climate, Community and Biodiversity Alliance, or CCBA. CCBA provides an internationally accepted set of standards to judge carbon projects, giving potential investors a clear idea of how effective particular projects are. Additionally, a REDD project for Prey Long would help to avoid further ecological and biological losses from the country's lowland evergreen forest and to conserve the unique swamp forests. REDD also has the potential to provide socio-economic development to local communities and at the same time preserve the forests upon which their livelihoods depend.
The sun there, they're looking for the some honey of the small bee.
There are obvious questions as to how effective REDD can be, given its enormous complexity. However, there can be no doubt that we as a global population have a responsibility to protect what little remains of our planet's forests. In the end, it comes down to a matter of costs. There are certain expenses associated with the REDD process, but if done successfully, the benefits are many. The question must be, what is it worth to us to ensure the future stability of our climate?